need to make a dynamic little thingy. What we're actually going to do now is we're actually going to make a blueprint. Now, so a new folder, we're just going to call this blueprints. Now, a mesh is just a mesh, and a mesh you can then assign materials to. A blueprint is more like a piece of code that may or may not have a mesh associated. In this case, I'm going to make a blueprint class. Now, there's a few different choices here. Actors can be placed, pawns can be possessed, characters. I want a pawn because this is a ship that I'm going to fly. It doesn't need the special things that like a person needs, so I'm just going to choose a pawn. And I'm going to call it rocket pawn. Let's spell you correctly. Now, inside you is almost nothing. Now, I'll pull you off, get my mesh, drag my rocket ship in there. And while I'm here, I'm also going to drop in my boost because my boost is going to go there too. Now, scroll out a bit. Now, default scene route, no, the rocket ship. I'll make that the scene route because I want that to be the scene route. And then there's one thing, that's the flame. Now, so the rocket ship being the root of the pawn means that that's also kind of like where its origins are. Everything else from that is then relative down. Now, what I'm going to show you as far as the dynamic material goes, and apologies for me losing my voice, is the flame, because at the moment I don't need dynamic materials on the ship because at the moment nothing's changing. But the flame I do, because I want when this ship boosts for the flame to glow. So there's a couple of places you can do this. I like to make it into its own little function. So you've got when a blueprint is first either spawned in a level or if you put it in there within the editor. Because now that I've got this blueprint, content drawer, blueprints, if I bring that in there, that's now a blueprint. That's the thing. And I can edit it, which is what I was editing before. Now, when it's either put in the level or from being spawned within the game, or you put it there, it executes the construction script. Also, on the event graph, you can put event begin play. So if this thing is around when play gets hit, it goes there. So I'm going to go construction script, but I'm not going to put my material creation into my construction script because I don't like doing that. I'm just going to create my own function, which is create. What am I going to call it? Create flame dynamic material. So created that function in my construction script, drag in the function, drag it across. So when this blueprint is constructed, it is going to then run this. Now, parts of this might seem a little bit confusing, but you'll just have to roll with it, and eventually it makes sense. So what we want to do is, so when you're in the blueprints, if you hit the right mouse button, it lets you type in what you want to do. And it's, knowing keywords is the key, obviously. I'm going to get a drink. Hold on. Not sure if that helped. But anyway, dynamic material. So I'm going to create a dynamic material instance. Now these ones with brackets on the side, I'm never quite sure when. I think it just means it automatically assigns it to that thing, but I like to keep it a bit more generalized than that. So create dynamic material instance. Now we'll drag it across. Now the parent. So this is the parent material, and in this case it is just that ship material because that was the first one we made that was dynamic. Optional name, creation flags. No, we don't really need them. Well, I don't know what they do. So we've created it, and now without doing anything else though, we just lose this and it wouldn't go anywhere either. So we've created it. Now a nice thing we can do when we're using this is to create references to these new objects and things that we've just made. We just pull it off. So in this case, return value, we just pull it off. And one of the options is promote to variable. And I'm just going to call this flame material because that seems obvious to me. And a set. So I've set the flame material. So what we've got here is we're creating this flame material. We're creating it. And then we're creating basically a reference here. And now we've got to apply it to that mesh. So if we pull the mesh over here, see, up here, rocket boost flame, that was the mesh, that was the ship mesh. There's the boost flame mesh. I pull it off down there. So it gives me options. Now when I pull it off, now this is context sensitive. You can untick that, but there's usually never much of a need to. So I can start typing them, and for one of them I want to go is if I type in material, one of them will be, and set, usually set and get set material. So there, set the material. So that was quite easy. So obviously, whether or not it's obvious, the difference between, say, Blender shaders and this is that this is a string of executions. This has to flow. You can't not have it flow. So if this was a gap, that would stop there and nothing else would execute, even though it's there. So it's probably really obvious, but so it goes there, it sets there. This function sets the material, so it takes this mesh, which is the target, and it applies this material onto element index 0. Now, index 0 is like, in this case, the flame. There is index 0. That probably makes sense to you. Okay, so in some ways that's it. It's there, it's set, and if we hit compile and save it and go down here, I've chosen the wrong one, haven't I? Yeah, you moron. No, so the ship material, no, we wanted it to be flame material, of course. And now we can't see it because remember that flame material was just a nothing. It was a additive. So in order to see it, what we can then do is we need to think we can now edit that temperature parameter. So in the event graph, I'm going to make a thing called what I'm going to do is somewhere in my project settings, I can find project. Let me find the thing I need to before I embarrass myself too much. Right, engine input. So this is the part where you set up what keys do what in the games. So action mappings. So this was under project settings, input. You'll find that you edit this kind of thing quite a bit. I'm going to make it so when I hit space, that the thing I want to show you does the thing. Right, so action mapping. I'm going to add one down here, action mapping, and I'm going to just call this run flame animation. Cool. And is just going to type in space bar, and that's it. So it's easy. So when I hit, what this does is it creates a run flame animation sort of function action mapping within the blueprint system, which you'll see in a moment. So if I minimize this, I should now be able to go flame animation, run flame animation. So input action, run flame animation. That's just what I typed in before. So when I hit space, this here, something will run off it. Now there's a thing within the blueprints called a timeline. Now timelines are an easy way of doing a quick animation, and you'll see what it means. So I'll call it flame. And so when I hit space, it executes this, pressed, it ends this play, and then I'll double click on this, and I'll go a float track, length 5, how do I add a key. So at time 0, it'll go right up to 4,000. Cool. Where are you? How do I view? And then at time 5, add key. At time 5 seconds, it goes to 0. So what I've created is, like, as you can see, a little graph. At 0 seconds, it starts at 5,000 and it goes all, or 4,096. Whatever, 4,000, all the way down to there. And I'll close that in the event graph. So new track, that's the track. I'm sure this is potentially confusing you, but as you'll see the end result, you might make it might make a bit more sense now. So I've got this flame material down here. I'll get it. I'll type in scalar because I know that that's what it is. So set scalar parameter value, update here, parameter name, temperature. So back a couple of steps. When I hit space, it runs this timeline thing, which then basically starts playing this down across there. And what that does is every frame or tick, it sends an update, which changes that parameter value of temperature, and it changes the value to the value, and it starts out hot. So what it should do is, well, let's see if you can work out what it should do. So if I hit play, first off, I'm going to see if the rocket is in front of me, and no, it's not. So I'm going to move this rocket so it's in front of me. So hopefully when I hit play, it's in front of me. No, not quite. It needs to go further away from me so you can see it a bit better. Play. Let's hit space. Oh, mouse control. It didn't work. I had to go change it so that it was receiving input. You would normally do this a different way if you were actually creating a game rather than just trying to show off an example. So let's see, play, mouse control. Oh. Now I'm in a lot of trouble remembering how I get this thing to take input so that when I actually push an action mapping, that it goes to that particular blueprint, because of course it's much more complicated, but I'll show you the simple thing in that when I hit play, I've now edited this so that hits play, event, begin play, executes this thing, which gets it hot and bright. Let's see it. Look, it's glowing. It's glowing, and then the glow dies off. As you can see, the timeline dies down. So in some ways, it's been quite disappointing. But hopefully what you can see from that is that from within these blueprints, when you have created dynamic materials, and when you have those material parameters like we looked at before, so when we have the parameters like roughness and metallic, and you can edit those from within the blueprint while the game is playing, that, yes, that means you can change the metallic factor. You can make it so that when you push a button, it pushes the temperature up and it makes it glow, or many different things. And I've found these dynamic materials is what gave me an awful lot of flexibility and stuff that I really struggled to do in Blender, because in Blender I would have to pre-program when they occurred. I wouldn't be able to control the materials or the shaders changing in any way that was like a game. Anyway, that was the last part of my 3-part series. I might show some more later if I can figure out how to not embarrass myself, because I feel like I've just shown off pretty much how much of a sort of jury-rigged, just sort of made it work without making it work elegantly. I'm going to have to try harder.